Hey everyone, so I wanted to make a video today because, like many of you, I've been closely following the Gabby Petito story in the news. It is just absolutely heartbreaking. And for those of you who don't know the story, Gabby is a young woman who is traveling with her boyfriend in a camper van across the country. She went missing. He returned home without her and without answers as to where she was. And in the last day or so, they found a body that they believed to be hers, and he is now missing. So on many levels all around, it is a tragic and heartbreaking case. And also over the last few days, there's been new information coming out in the news about what was going on in the days and weeks leading up to her disappearance. And one of the things that came out was body cam footage from a police officer who had an encounter with them. Shortly before Gabby went missing, a bystander, somebody passing by, saw something that they believed looked like a domestic violence altercation. They called 911, and eventually a police officer was able to track down their van, pull them over, and talk to them. And I will just say, watching that video brought back a lot of memories for me, because when I was in my late teens, early 20s, like 19 to 20 years old, I was in a really abusive relationship. And we had encounters with the police under similar circumstances where somebody would be passing by, they would see me getting yelled at, see someone up in my face, they would hear loud yelling, and they would call the police, and 5 minutes later, there would be the sirens and the lights, and a cop car would pull up. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that today to maybe bring some clarity into what we've seen in the news and what is kind of behind the behaviors that we saw. Why both partners act a certain way when the police come, what the mindset of someone is when maybe they're relaying something other than the reality of the situation. And what I don't want to do is analyze the video of Gabby and her boyfriend. Could I? Absolutely. But this is an active and ongoing case. And I want to be really mindful of that and respectful of the families, of the fact that everyone is searching for answers. I don't want to put labels out there. I have an opinion based on my line of work. But what I don't want to do right now is share that conclusion that I've come to and try to basically come up with evidence to prove it to be true by analyzing the video and talking about their behaviors. I don't want to do that. I want to talk about my experience and the experiences that I know of through the other survivors that I've worked with for the last 14 years. So, with that being said, case aside, let's talk about two people in a relationship, in a bad argument, police are called. Toxic, abusive, some level of madness in that relationship. Healthy relationships don't get the cops called on them, okay? Unless it's a total misunderstanding, but let's just assume that there's some toxic dynamics. So one of the things that we saw on TV, on the news, in that body cam footage is something that happens quite frequently. So you have a situation where there's two individuals, and one of them is taking the blame, one of them is apologizing, one of them is minimizing, the other one is saying it's nothing. Very rarely is everyone speaking the truth. Now, I can relate to this, and I know many survivors can, because this happened to me many times. I would be with my boyfriend in a parking lot, outside at night somewhere, outside my car, in a park, and somebody would pass by and call the police. And without fail, anytime the police showed up, my default was to minimize the situation, say that it was nothing, acknowledge, yes, we were arguing, but it wasn't as bad as what someone saw. I can imagine it must have looked that way, but we're okay now. Thank you for your concern. I would say anything I could to de-escalate the situation and hope that I could just play it off to the best of my ability, where the police would give me a nod, move on with their night, and then we could just get back to calming down. And that's because when you're in a relationship with somebody who's very volatile, you start to become conditioned to going into management mode, to find ways to de-escalate the hostile behaviors, to find ways to justify what's going on, to calm them down. And I believe that for the 2 years that I was in my abusive relationship, I was constantly trying to just calm him down in those moments. I would do everything I could just to get him to breathe, to stop yelling, to stop causing a scene, because for me, survival mode was getting him to calm down so that we could just go to sleep happy, right? So that we could go to sleep safely. The idea of doing anything else to me was scarier and much harder. So, I wasn't going to then ever say to the police, oh, you're right, he was doing this, this, and this, because, part of it is you don't want to get your partner in trouble. You don't want to see them get arrested. And also there's this fear of retaliation. If this person was already losing it on you 5 minutes ago, how are they going to react now when they get arrested, go to jail, get bailed out, and then meet back up with you? So there's a real fear of retaliation. I think the other part too is that depending on how long you've been in the relationship, it takes a while to really admit that things are bad. I hadn't even admitted to myself that it was as bad as it was. So to admit it to the police would have meant acknowledging just how bad things were. Instead, I protected myself by coming up with these excuses and finding ways to justify all this behavior. So that's a very common response, and it's a very common mindset. And this starts pretty early in abusive relationships, because the beginning of any abusive or toxic relationship is great, right? If somebody was horrible on date one, you wouldn't date them again. And so that makes it really challenging, because what happens is you meet this person who's amazing, everything you could ever possibly want, head over heels, fall in love with them. And then when these behaviors start to come out, the jealousy, the insecurity, the possessiveness, the outbursts, the mood swings, it's such a departure from the person that you met that you have to find reasons to explain it. You can either say it's external, it's because their job, it's because of their finances, it's because they're fighting with their parents right now, it's because they have trust issues because of their last relationship. Or you can internalize it and say, it's because I did this, I did that. That's something that many abusive partners will attempt to accomplish, is to make you feel like when they have outbursts, it's your fault. They will play these mind games. They will shift the blame. They will gaslight you to the point where now you wonder, maybe it was my fault all this is happening. So from a very early point in a toxic relationship, you become conditioned to find ways to justify all this stuff. And it takes a while before you're ever ready to say, no, you're right, this is what's going on, it's wrong, and I'm gonna tell the truth and change things. It takes a while to get there. I think that, part of it too is sometimes you see, often there's like polar opposite behaviors. So another thing that's really common in police encounters is that one person is totally cool, calm, and collected, and the other one is a wreck. And there's a reason for that too. So for many victims, it is a constant battle to keep their partner happy, to just get things back to the way they were, to hope that things will get better. But it's defeating because you feel trapped. It's just the same story over and over. And with abuse, it escalates. So it's an even worse story over and over. And now the cops are here. And for many victims, they come to a breaking point where suddenly the police are there, they're questioning it. It's been an hour or more of just, violent behavior and yelling. And by the time the police are there, you are just a mess, a hot mess. You're crying. You don't know what to do. You don't know whether to tell the truth or to lie. You just want to make your partner happy. You start to take on the blame and say it was my fault, hoping that will, satisfy the police. And then the other person almost always is the opposite. They're relaxed, they're calm, they're saying, my partner just, they lost it, they started getting mad at me, they grabbed the wheel, they're crazy, I'm just trying to deal with it. And they play this pity card. And that's why for the untrained officer or the untrained eye, many times you don't know who is at fault. You don't know who the aggressor is. And so that's really challenging too. And what's important to know is that in most cases, the person who is crying and apologetic and taking on the blame is usually the victim. So, there's psychology behind this. There's reasons that, a victim might act erratic and the one perpetrating the harm or the one initiating the arguments would act calm. And that's because an abuser's whole MO is to maintain power and control. And they do that through a number of different means. They do that through the physical harm. They do that through building a sense of physical endangerment from driving erratically or slamming doors or yelling really loudly. They also do that with the manipulation and the mind games, the emotional and psychological abuse. They want to make you feel crazy, because when you feel crazy, when you no longer have a self-esteem or self-confidence or self-worth, when you no longer have your own identity outside of your partner, it lowers the risk that you're going to leave. And that's what an abusive partner wants. Power and control essentially is they don't want you to leave them. And so that's why sometimes when you look at these encounters or see how one party reacts versus the other, it's hard to know the truth unless you've had training on this and understand behavioral dynamics. And, I definitely relate to the whole, your partner is calm as can be. I will say that I never had a breaking point with the police. I was always very in control. My role was as manager in these situations. I knew how to compose myself and speak intelligently and make it seem like it was no big deal. I never was brainwashed into thinking that I was the reason he acted that way. Instead, I was an empath. I tried to rationally and intelligently understand why he had traumas and why he acted that way. And so I knew it was not my fault ever, but I did put up with it and I did excuse it for a very long time. But there were, a few encounters where he would say to the police, my girlfriend just lost it on me. She was accusing me of things. I didn't do anything wrong. Up to the actual final time that the police were called, I worked up the courage to break up with him and walk away. And unfortunately, 2 weeks later, he returned to my apartment, broke his way in, attacked me, strangled me. And then on top of that, broke all the windows. He went and punched all the windows in the apartment and shattered them. And I was able to escape. I was able to get away and call the police. And when they came back to the apartment and knocked on the door, he was there with his hands behind his back. And he smiled at the officers and he says, yes, officers, is there something wrong? I was just at home relaxing in my apartment when my girlfriend showed up and started causing problems. And I was like, are you kidding me? So then the cops, of course, were like, show us your hands. And they were covered in blood from everything he broke. And he was arrested that night. But it's remarkable, really, how they can play that role and how calculated it all really is. So just some thoughts. I didn't plan this video out. I hope it made some sense. I'm going to keep following this case. And like I said, I don't want to sit here and cast judgment. I have my own opinions, but that wasn't what this is about. You know, maybe down the road, years from now, when the case is hopefully closed and solved, I'll be able to analyze that video and explain it, or, you know, I don't know, use it as a teaching tool, because I do believe that moments like this can be opportunities. It is so heartbreaking, but, you know, I hope that we're having conversations, because sadly, toxic and abusive relationships are very common, especially among young people. You know, my line of work is going into schools and talking about this, and 1 in 3 teens will experience some form of abuse in a relationship, and that is a significant number. And I know that not just from research, but from my real-time conversations year-round with people who have gone through almost my same exact story. So I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this. You know, if you've ever been in a similar situation, I'd love to know what your mindset was. Did you tell the truth? Did you minimize it? Did you try to de-escalate it? You know, why? And, you know, I hope that this sparks ongoing conversations around red flags and reminding ourselves to be vigilant, to check in with family and friends, to have systems set up if we do have a weird gut feeling about something, or about someone's dating. So, someone is someone, you know what I mean? You get it. Yeah, I hope this is an opportunity for us to talk about a really important issue. So I'm Ashley. I don't do too many YouTube videos, but I'd like to do it more, not this long. I'll do shorter videos, I promise. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. If you like listening to me talk, if you want more conversations on this, do me a favor, give me a subscribe, give me a like, give me a follow, find me on social, wherever you hang out. And I'd love to stay connected with you. So eager to hear your thoughts. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and I'm here if anyone needs anything. Bye, guys.